Right, hello. Hopefully you can see and hear me. I'm aware the lighting looks a bit weird. It's because the ceiling light and all that, I've put the UV bulbs in them for the time being. So I've only got one regular lamp on, which is the one. All the other lights, obviously, as you can see, give off like a weird blue glow, which is quite cool actually, because it means the stuff behind me, like has the radioluminescent. Well, it's not actually radioluminescent, but you know what I mean. Anyway, but this stream was going to be to discuss that stuff that's going on in America, because at the moment, loads and loads of people keep asking me in comments, can I talk about the thing, and I don't really want to do a video on it. So as long as everybody keeps this, civil, that's absolutely fine. But so don't start insulting people if they have a different opinion than you on stuff anyway. Yeah, there's a lot of people joining, so good evening to everybody. So yeah, a lot more people viewing than normal, but so yeah, I'd like to hear different people's opinions on it. My opinion is obviously people who peacefully protest, that's a good thing. It's basically exercising rights to free speech and assembly and things like that. People obviously smashing up random people's stores and things like that, I think is completely pointless and stupid. So what have the police done then, Lena, that's escalated things? Because I can obviously understand, like, why it sucks for business owners and that. And I can understand what the police initially did, especially like that dickhead officer that's being obviously charged and everything now, that basically knelt on the guy's neck and killed him. So yeah, but right, so apologies again, the chat is a lot more busy than I expected. I'll read Glow in the Dark's comment out, because he's a former policeman and he lives in the US now, but he used to be a policeman in the UK. He said a lot of people just using it as an excuse to steal loot and smash things up, but that just spoils it for people doing it for the real reasons. Yeah, I think that's what happens with lots of protests, isn't it? You have people who are legitimately protesting something, and you have idiots that turn up and think this is a good excuse to loot and steal, and just do criminal damage or whatever. While everything else is going on. Yeah, I'd agree with that, Dwarven Miner. Basically, yeah, peaceful protests are fine. You want the police to not be aggressive towards people. Sadly, not very easy to get spare parts for an S10, just because it seems a lot of the time they're sold as complete packages or like spares and repairs damaged models rather than individual parts being sold. No, I had not heard about that at all, Chrisu. I mean, it's very tasteless, isn't it, doing something like that for an edgy joke? So yeah, apologies. As the stream chat is moving so fast, I'll try and just spot any questions I can answer that might be to do with tear gas or whatever and gas masks, and try and read out any sort of comments I think are quite profound or whatever. You can get FM12 outserts on eBay. Yeah, if anybody who owns a gun in the US, Morgan, is certainly not a white supremacist. I would never say that, because obviously the Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. Anonymous, the Avon CT12, but one hype gave me recently, which I really, really like, is this. The Chinese MF11D. I showed that in the stream the other day. The video for this comes out on, I think it's Sunday, but this is a really nice mask. Oh, thank you very much, Lawfish. He says, the riots are nothing more than angry, selfish people expressing their anger. I get people's anger, but why harm those who haven't done anything wrong? Yeah, I certainly agree with that. a thing to point out as well is the thing I really don't get with these sort of riots is when people have their like stores looted and burnt down. And for example, if it's black people that own a store in somewhere that's predominantly a black area, that's not helping anyone, is it? That's one of the things I really don't get. I mean, I know there are really selfish people that just use something like this as an excuse to start going looting. But yeah, I would definitely agree with you that people are doing just, random criminal shit isn't hurting anybody except themselves. I'm all right, thank you, that guy. Speaking of beer, yes. Alex, it's called the Chinese MF11D. The video for it will be coming out on Sunday. I believe the Chinese current military gen mask is called the FMJ09, and this is like the commercially sold sort of industrial civilian variant. But I only managed to get one because Hype sent me one as a present because, I think it's pretty much very hard to get outside of China at the moment. But the really nice thing of this is the panoramic lens actually conforms to the nose cup. So it's gone. I might put a blanking plug on it, though, because I prefer it with just one filter and a blanking plug than... Yeah, because the one we had... this isn't all that dissimilar from... I know a lot of people say the LA riots as well. Was it 92, 93? Basically, we had a similar thing in London in 2011 when... But this is the thing, I don't think the police... This is probably very controversial. I don't think the police shooting that time was actually not justifiable. Because I don't think the officers were ever charged for it. Because it was basically somebody who was a known drug dealer that they thought was going for a gun and shot him. And that... but, they started off as peaceful protests against it, was fine. But then, very quickly people said, oh, let's use this as an excuse to start looting, why there's not enough police. Yeah, exactly, glow in the dark. That's the thing I never really get. I mean, I get it why people do stupid shit like that because they're angry or whatever, but it's very, very, horrible, isn't it? If you are, from that area and then your place just gets wrecked, When you say BA, do you mean breathing apparatus, glow in the dark? No, sadly not, because I don't have an air tank or anything. I've got a couple of masks that are designed to use with airlines rather than filters, but... Yeah, exactly, Iron Man. This is the thing I really can't understand as well, when it's people destroying their own neighborhoods. Because, you're not exactly giving it to the man or whatever, are you, if you're literally destroying, other people's, I'm sure a lot of us in the chat seem to agree with that sort of sentiment. It's just, I can never understand that mentality, Yeah, Brandon, P3 filters do block, P3, P100 filters do block CS powder. But the only issue is that if CS is mixed with other agents to be dispersed, those other agents can still get through the filter. Wasn't there... Well, you said Half about rioters being bussed into cities. Wasn't there apparently something of people, like, handing out bricks to people? Like, essentially vans full of, like, bats and, like, bricks, and they were handing them out to anybody they thought might cause problems. When you say C3, Caden, do you mean this Canadian C3 respirator? If you've got it with a working filter, yes. Hello, Richard. In the short term, CS gas, Samwise, or CS powder. In the long term, I guess Corona, but... what was that, Miss Valdez? I've not, like I said, we've not obviously seen all the news coming from the US and the UK over it. But it's big enough now that people on most UK news channels want to talk about what's going on in the US, not Corona all the time now. Yeah, I mean, I think, Ian, if you look at lots of history, there's probably been a lot of history, historical moments where people, for the most part, who get on with each other end up going at each other's throats, sadly. Um, which one's PAVA then, glow in the dark? Is that like a spray? But, you don't want any of that, do you, going down you? Because obviously all of them are like eye irritants, sort of breathing irritants. I would certainly virtual reality. I guess that's like virtual reality if the things swapped around. I would certainly agree with you that if it's one rule for white people, one rule for black people, that is fucked up. Especially if it's because the thing is, I'm definitely not somebody who wants to start going racist, racist, racist. When you hear people say it, because something just genuinely, could be a thing like that. But that is fucked up if it is literally like, oh, if people who are on my side are protesting, then it's fine. Okay, so it's like a pepper spray thing. All right, that makes sense. Glow in the dark, because I know like CS and CN from their like chemical names. I can never remember the full name for CS, but tear gas kind of agent. So it's a pepper spray thing, isn't it? Yeah. So far this year, we've got a deadly virus pandemic, floods, forest fires, riots, volcanic eruptions. Oh. Yeah, I heard about that magnificent bar steward. Didn't wasn't it like people just watching and videotaping the police from their like porches and then were shot at with like riot control agents? Like, yeah. I've heard some people have already like lost eyes and things, haven't they? Thanks to like rubber bullets and beanbag rounds and that, which is again fucked up because they're meant to be, like a few people have said already in the chat, when police are meant to fire rubber bullets, they're meant to aim at the ground. The idea is that they lose a lot of velocity by the time they bounce up and hit somebody. But if obviously they're being shot directly at people, that's a problem. And also that I should point out all the time, really, of this sort of stuff, that it's really, really hard to actually that's why I call them less lethal kind of stuff, because like any rubber bullet or something hitting somebody in the head fast enough can kill them. But yeah, so I didn't see what Finland said, but yeah, it started because basically a black man was essentially murdered by a policeman who had his like knee on the guy's neck while he said I couldn't breathe. It reminded me of the one from years ago. Was it Eric Gardner or somebody was called, who was like chokeholded to death by the cops? Because the thing is, like when people go on about police shootings, if it is literally a case of somebody might have a gun on them and the cop thinks they're going for their gun and they shoot first, although if they did end up killing somebody who ended up being innocent, that's fucked up. But I can understand why that happens. When it is literally somebody being essentially strangled or restrained in such a way that they choke to death, whatever. That is fucked up, isn't it? I'm not gonna be one of those people who go, oh, he deserved it, because there's like I've seen fucking idiots trying to say that already, and obviously not. But I think what a few people have said is a lot of this anger's probably been building up for a while. It's just sometimes like one of these events is a spark, isn't it? So, Chris from HR, do you think we can make Corona leaf blowers now as well to get Corona away from people? Yeah, the thing I can understand glow in the dark about pepper spray being more concentrated because it's more like a gel, isn't it? Where CS is more like an actual spray. So it'd be like trying to aim an air freshener can at somebody versus actually using, I know pepper spray, it's like silly string, isn't it, when it comes out? But yeah, I suppose as well, pepper spray, because it's more of a gel, sticks more around people's eyes than that when it's used. I know it comes in different like thicknesses, doesn't it? Sometimes it's like really gelish, sometimes it's more of a liquid. But Well, Corona still definitely exists. I think a lot of people might be angry over lockdown stuff, and then this is boiled over. But obviously, a lot of it is because, I think quite legitimately there is a lot of police brutality in America against black people. And like I was saying, I think you do need to differentiate on a case per case basis, because sometimes you'll get like the media doing all this stuff where they say this particular case where it was, clearly more of one of those justified, police shootings, but. Yeah, I'm sure they didn't, because I didn't Rodney King as well, the Kaz say when the LA riots happened, like, why can't everybody get along? Um, that's one of the things that's annoyed me recently, is a load of the media here keeps going about, like, when the police beat Rodney King to death. It's like they didn't beat him to death, they beat him up badly. And that was like the spark that started the LA riots, but the police didn't beat Rodney King to death. But for people having issues with the chat, you are most likely having the issue of using Chrome at the moment, where it keeps breaking with YouTube. I've made sure I streamed with what's it today? Opera. But yeah, in terms of organized Antifa, as in the people who dress up in black and then go and beat people up who have different political ideologies, and then fuck those guys. They basically are terrorists, because that's definition of terrorism, isn't it, for like political terror? But I view Antifa the same way as like black shirts or brown shirts. It's one of those kind of political extremist wings. But the problem is as well, you can't also say that anybody who has a different point of view is Antifa, because sorry, I might have missed your previous comment then, Glow in the Dark, but unless it was the one about CS versus pepper spray and that. Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, Dill, that people like that essentially are political terrorists, aren't they? Because I view people that wear a uniform and do it because they're beating up somebody for their political ideology very much like the Nazi brown shirts. But I'm saying, I know, because there'd be probably a lot of people that say I'm an anti-fascist, because, fascism is an extremist political sort of ideology. But yeah, the actual group Antifa, I definitely agree, are basically violent sort of, idiots. AK, it's probably just, if you're breathing too heavily, a small amount of it is probably getting through the top particle layer. I'd say try and breathe slower. For people saying their chat's glitching out, I think it's probably just like the Chrome memory leak type thing at the moment. Yep, I agree with you, Daniel. I just don't like doing streams where I talk about politics. What's it? Like, the thing is, I don't like bringing up politics on normal streams, because it's when they can completely get derailed at that point. If we're just having yeah, I agree with sort of what Infinity says there, but I think you have to be pretty careful saying stuff like that here. Yeah. Um, Yeah, it's annoying, Henry, but there's not much I can do about it, because that's the issue. This is why, like I was saying the other day, I actually like the fact sometimes when I stream now, I have like 40 or 50 people watching, not the ones where it's over 100, because this is where it actually gets hard to interact with people on the stream. You can't do slow mode on the chat anymore. It's no longer a thing. Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, Magnificent Bar Steward. I really don't get when people start protesting in random UK cities about something going on in a different country. You know. Any idea how you do it, Alex? Because I cannot find it anywhere. I don't know, Mike, Weapon Collector. Have you seen slow mode anywhere still? Because I've never seen it for ages now. They've buried it somewhere if it still exists. I mean, otherwise, yeah, slow mode would be perfect for a chat like this one, but sadly, right, Drill AZ, I'll read his comment out because I think that's a pretty good way of making a comeback comment to that. He says, as a British citizen, it kills me to see minorities oppressed. That's why we protest. Racism is universal and needs to be tackled universally. Right, that's a very good comment. I'll read that one out because I think that does give some insight into people doing it. But I don't mean necessarily always with, like what's going on at the moment, but sometimes you do get very strange protests over like some random thing happening in a different country. I don't want to like make it sound like that's what I'm on about at the moment. But, does that make sense? Because I've seen that with a lot of things, that you get people protesting like one country's policy towards something else, outside embassies. And I mean, people have the right to do that. It's just very strange when they do it when they're not going to change anything. Oh, so it has to be like an OBS stream, does it, Mike? That's weird. Yeah, exactly. Glow in the dark. If you were used to a feature that worked, All right, Samwise's comment's quite good. He said, "As a black British person, I don't feel like I'm treated differently, but some people act differently and wonder why they get treated differently." I was hearing some quite interesting stuff being brought up to do with that, to do with like overt and covert racism or whatever you want to call it, where you get like in some countries you'll get pretty much straightforward racial abuse, and in other countries you might get people more likely to not want to serve you or that sort of stuff, not want to give you a tip. I mean, the problem is, I think when you have lots of those very opinion-based sort of views on racism, like on, when people are phoning in radio talk shows, it does get really hard to work out, when it's somebody's opinion or how they're perceiving it and what's really happening. Oh, I definitely agree with you there, Straight 60s. Oh, yeah, he was basically murdered, in my opinion, by that cop. But yeah, looting and burning down, especially their own communities, isn't going to do anything. So I go to the live, let me try this, Alex. So go to the live dashboard on YouTube. In the chat module, click settings and enable slow mode, unless it's just for OBS now. Right, let's try that, because I have to open it in a new window, don't I now? Or like a new tab, because I know otherwise it'll break the stream. Live Live dashboard. That's this one. Live control room. Is it that, or is that live control room different than live dashboard? Right. So I'm on this one now. Additional settings. Oh, I can't do that. Okay. Viewer activity. No, that just shows super chats. Not that I can see anywhere, I'm afraid. No, sadly, I think it literally is one of those weird things of they've changed it and now ruined it, because yeah, it's not showing up where it should show up. But you know, maybe it is an OBS thing. Yeah, the thing that I thought was pretty fucked up last night, Drill AZ, was didn't Trump want to do some sort of photo opportunity near a church near the White House? So basically, he all of a sudden had like the police and everybody tear gas the shit out of the area. Because that definitely doesn't seem like, you know, people who are violently protesting who are then having, you know, like a measured response. It seems like, oh, I want a picture outside this church. I'm going to hold the Bible, you know. Doesn't he also not know the Bible? Because they were playing a clip from him on the radio earlier, where he was asked back in 2016 what his favourite Bible quote was and things like that, and he couldn't answer. But he basically, they said to him, "What do you prefer, the Old or New Testament?" "Oh, I like them equally." You know, it's like, "What's your favourite bit?" "Oh, I like all bits." But you know, that's a very personal question. All right, okay. So thanks, Mike, and thanks, Alex. Yeah, it seems to be OBS only, which is, you know, would only be useful if I knew in advance if I was going to have a stream that was really popular. Yeah, wasn't that Friday AK-47? Right, loads of comments going too fast for me to read again. It's not at my end, Drill, that it's broken. I think it is just YouTube either crapping out or all the problems of Chrome at the moment. So can somebody? This is an interesting point. Let's maybe bring this up in the stream because it will give us something to talk about more on a themed thing. So, what constitutional things prevent Trump using the military for like police use, and like what emergency powers can he use to do it? Because apparently they were on about something after the US Civil War about, you know, like a military intervention type thing. Does that have to be approved? Is it an emergency power? Can you just say like, I'm going to do this and do it? Right, I'm glad you're not getting tear gas then, Johnny. Personally, I don't have a problem with police as long as they're respectful to me. So what's the Insurrection Act for? Basically like another Civil War type thing. Because obviously, so I assume the National Guard can be mobilised in a different way, because the National Guard have been used quite a few times, haven't they, when there's been riots and like emergencies. And I think the National Guard were already mobilised, weren't they? But here's the thing, what I'm saying, Big Mouth, is how can he necessarily mobilise something if he doesn't have the powers to do it? Okay, Morgan looks like he's making a good comment. He says, the Insurrection Act of 1807, The reason it vibes with Posse Comitatus is that it allows the individual states to request federal military aid. It does not allow unilateral mobilization of the US military. Okay, so he basically can't send soldiers anywhere. The states have to basically say, please send soldiers to help us. Is that how it works? Oh, and then a few other people, thank you, Beagle, and a few others said about the insurrection laws. Well, interestingly, virtual reality, if you saw a load of stuff when that Ukrainian stuff happened, when was that? When they had all the stuff in Kiev happen? But there were lots of like Soviet, like, obviously Soviet, not American stuff, where they had it all as surplus, but like tanks and BMPs that just by having Molotovs thrown at them, like completely stopped working, or people making barricades. Yeah, 7SE, I've got a Carlsberg because there's loads in the fridge. No, I have no problem with Russians. TSCOM, I don't hate anybody. Because if you talk to individual people from lots of countries, they're normally all nice people. It's generally just governments that fuck everything up for everybody. But, nice thing, at least on YouTube, is you talk to people from all over the world, and generally most normal people are all right. Yeah, Maidan protest, that's it. Thank you, Swaggerina. You can literally go to supermarkets, Oliver, and buy alcohol, unless you're after something special. That's generally the cheapest place because, you buy the big multi-packs where it's like 20 to 30, beers in a... All right, I'll allow Trevor's comment because that was hidden. He was saying he's Native American and gets racially abused a lot. So yeah, that's a shame. Hope you're doing all right. No, I don't hate Chinese people. TSCOM again with lots of countries. I can think, for example, the Chinese Communist Party is pretty shitty. That doesn't mean that I have anything against regular Chinese people. I don't see why that's a hard concept for some people to grasp, but it gets brought up a lot. All right, cheers, Drill AZ. It's more one of those things where I sometimes don't bother shaving it, and then if I shave it, I think, oh, I wish I hadn't shaved it. But yeah, like if people didn't hear my point, is my thoughts on a lot of this is basically a lot of it will probably be underlying stuff that's been going on for a long time that's boiled over. Because I think in general, if you have one event, it's never a big enough spark, or it might be a spark, but it never starts off such a big fire, if you want to use these terms. But obviously there has been lots and lots of issues for years, haven't there, with lots of right, Glow in the Dark. I really don't want to open a big can of worms by going into that, because it's certainly, I definitely don't agree with the very Nazi-ish opinions that, some people have. But again, I don't know where actually a lot of it stems from. Like, a lot of it is always like people who seem to have a conspiracy where it's like, we would do great if it wasn't for this group of people, and it's always like insert X or X. All right, cheers, Jolly. It's always like, insert X, insert Y, sort of things. I could certainly understand it from a jealousy perspective, Glow in the Dark. But a lot of the time when I've seen, like, these kind of conspiratorial things where a group is blamed, it's always very circular logic of, wow, they've tricked you if you don't, there's no real evidence. That's the thing, is there? Oh, and if anybody asks about questions to do with, like, can this go through armor or whatever, I'm not answering any questions to, like, I'll happily answer questions on helmets and protective equipment. For people asking about, like, CS stuff to protect you from, you know, blunt impacts and stuff like that, but I'm not going to give anybody advice for obvious reasons on a stream like this on how to harm police or harm other people. It's not just fascists, Johnny, that use that. It's basically any sort of extreme political thing. The communists had the kulaks and whoever else, you know, the bourgeois. There's every single extremist ideology generally has, you know, a victim group that they can point at and say, this is the cause of all your problems, you know. I have never bought paint with the intention of looking into its fire retardedness. So I'm just trying to keep up the chat. And some of them are like multi-messages where unless I see all the message in one thing, it's a bit pointless. Yes, Daniel, there'll be the 100k subscribers plaque on that wall behind me when I eventually get it. Yeah, I definitely don't want to go over religion in this stream, Glow in the Dark, because I don't think it's that relevant, is it? The only thing I think religiously relevant in this is Trump waving the Bible around outside that church. Have I checked my privilege, NPC? No. Well, I think in general, with like, I'm just going to say this about a lot of political stuff, that in general, you should probably be open to a lot of ideas and not want to go 100% down one political path. You know, it always seems silly when people are like, oh, I've always voted for this party and I always will vote for this party, because that means you probably don't have very good critical thinking skills. No, I don't have a PO box, sadly. I'm waiting for some more normal comments now because there's been a load of just weird ones in a row that I've seen. So I'm just waiting really now to see some comments that aren't like weird kind of questions, you know, that aren't related to the stream or whatever. Apollo Rogers says generic normal comment, thank you. In what sense, Mackenzie? As in the riots or the troubles in Northern Ireland? Which sort of one? What was the question that Glow in the Dark said that Brian also said? Or did he say something and then Glow in the Dark was saying the same question back? I've missed that because the chat's moving too fast. I definitely think they should do Swaggerino, but does it mean that basically, because I don't know about all the different states, the stand your ground laws, castle laws, all those. So basically, does that mean that the police are stopping people from defending their property? Because that's fucked up, isn't it? if that's the case. But like I said, I don't know what it is, across all states, and everything else. Yeah, I agree with you there, Wolfie. There is no point in looting and burning down properties because it's not going to achieve anything. But as we've already said, a lot of the people doing that are probably not people who have any interest in legitimate, gripes of people protesting. Yeah, and if pissed bricks looters beat to death a store owner, I think they should face the death penalty for that. It should be applied to everybody. What are things like in our LA, Los Angeles, and CT Ranger? Are they bad there? I've not really seen which states are worse than others. Obviously, most of the stuff that's got the attention of the news over here is where there's been like all the protests outside the White House, because obviously that's directly outside the president's door, isn't it? Really? Oh, it's good that person's still alive, Corey, but they should still definitely get charged, if caught harshly for beating somebody horribly or whatever, and looting and everything. Seven Williams, it might get worse. I don't want to be that person who says that, but it's like a good old one of those Soviet dark humor jokes I really like. That's what does the Soviet optimist say? Things can't get any worse. I definitely think we're going to get a second wave now, in all honesty, with lots of the stuff that's been going on. I think there's definitely going to be a second wave of corona. Yeah, it sounds a bit fucked up then, Corey, but yeah. Like I said, I don't wish violence on anybody, though. You'd, like I said, like I'll just repeat this because I think a few people might have missed this who have joined the stream at various times. People who are protesting peacefully. Now, the only thing I say at the moment is due to all the corona stuff. You don't want to cause a second wave and inadvertently kill people through spreading a disease, but peaceful protesting is a right people should take up. Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, things like that. People, especially if they're looting and burning down their own neighborhoods, are not going to achieve anything. I just thought I'd repeat that because I've had some weird comments where people, asked like what I thought were quite leading questions with, do you support the riots? Well, what are the riots? In a sense. Well, yeah, exactly. Seven. I see. I completely agree with you there. I feel awful for people, especially if they're quite poor. They've spent their life or years building up a business, and then maybe it's insured, maybe it's not, but it gets burnt down or smashed up or whatever because that person had nothing to do with. I'm still waiting for a comment that, because in all honesty, as much as I, thought it'd be interesting to talk about this and hear people's points of view, there does become a time when you get so many of those kind of, deluded comments from certain people in a row that you think, all right, fuck talking to this person. If anybody was racist in this chat and I spotted them, they get a ban as well. But I always find the people really weird going like, oh, you can't say you support freedom of speech because you might not like when I have an opinion. that's very different than, you know, it being a, you know, right in a public place. Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, glow in the dark, but I think it would really depend, Mike. It depends. I think personally for me, it depends how professional the actual officer is. You know, that's why I don't like to have an attitude that all police are good or all police are bad. You know, I hope really I don't have to ever deal with the police, because that means I'm not in trouble or, you know, a victim of something really. But you know, I hope if I had to deal with the police that they're professional and, you know, straightforward and, you know. But you know, of course, there are bad apples with a lot of things, but. Daniel says opinions like arseholes, everybody has one, exactly. I'd say yes, TSCOM, definitely wear stuff to give you eye protection, if you're, especially if you're peacefully protesting, because you don't want a rubber bullet or something flying to take an eye out or give you a really bad injury. Yeah, exactly, Mike. Like I said, I'm managing it for one stream tonight because lots of people kept asking me to talk about it, but, you know. Right, Corey, there's a couple of different things. We have what's called a Section 1 and 2 firearms certificate, which covers basically rifles on Section 1, shotguns on Section 2. And I can't show it on this stream, but there's an old Schmitz Rubin rifle over there. And that is not classed as a firearm by law because it's so old, but it's a fully functional firearm. So UK laws probably aren't as bad as a lot of people think in the US, but at the same time, you know, a lot of people here just simply don't care about guns. I've heard about that fighting Welsh. I brought that up earlier in the stream. And people doing stuff like that need to be fucking charged with it, you know. Because this is the problem I've had is like where there were people going like, oh, what does Trump mean by anti-fascist? There's no such thing. All decent people are like Antifa. It's like, no, not as in the Antifa group that are, you know, basically like the Nazi brown shirts, just, you know, a left-wing variant. You know, I don't agree with intimidating people and beating them up because their political views are different than yours. You know, I'm more of the opinion of a lot of these things that sunlight is the best sanitizer or whatever they say. That when, you know, some people with pretty bigoted views spout them out, you know, people pretty quickly realize that they're, you know, idiots. Yeah, I think definitely, Daniel, that lots of people on social media sites or, you know, whatever groups can get into, like, you know, those really circular thinking things where they get more and more, you know, because that's one of those things that they talk about, don't they? A lot with different sorts of extremism, whether it be religious extremism, you know, political ideology stuff. Lots and lots of people do literally get, you know, dangerously brought into it because they spend so much time, you know, surrounding themselves with one trail of thought. It becomes, you know, such a circular logic. Yeah, definitely agree with you there, glow in the dark. I think Mr. Unclean, it's because, and I'm going to say this from somebody who's obviously not American, this is just looking in from the outside, because it probably happens quite a lot, and often it gets filmed. And whether or not, you know, every case is a case of police brutality or whatever, you know, and lots of it would probably be, you know, black on black or white on white violence as well. But I think a lot of the time is probably seen as, you know, something that's never really gone away. That would be my, you know, No, I've not heard about that, Stephen, but I imagine there are lots of very hypocritical people that like this sort of stuff when it doesn't affect them, or it only affects people whose opinions they don't like. Don't Trip says one traffic warden with an SLR can stop any riot easy. I do know the reference, though, that you're making. No, I haven't Vector, but that sounds really fucked up. That is literally top tier cunt behavior, in my opinion, if you are burning a homeless man's only possessions. Fuck people that do shit like that. But, like I've said, I think what we've been saying with the corona stuff, you see the best and worst in a lot of people, don't you? Really? Yeah, straight 6 diesel. The SLR is the self-loading rifle Britain used. I have one, but sadly can't show it on the stream, although it's a DIAC one. Britain used it from the 1950s, I think some point in the 1950s up until the 1980s. They were also called like imperial fowls because they weren't metric pattern, but you know. Yeah, the thing is, Lapbricks, I certainly would agree with you that there seems to be, because what's annoyed me for years of America and stuff is where lots of people are blaming Trump for stuff that had nothing to do with Trump. Now, I can certainly understand people protesting and them saying, like, oh, Trump's going overboard with some stuff he's doing or whatever, and some people saying Trump's not doing enough, he's showing weakness or whatever. That I can get. But yeah, the stuff I really don't get is when people for ages have almost been, I think, throwing fuel maybe on this fire that's now started, where they were literally saying, this is all Trump's fault or Trump voters' fault. It's an us or them mentality. Oh, hiccups. Yeah, that's one of the main things, Stephen, I've said I don't like about the US is the medical system, just because I'm somebody with chronic illnesses. So I imagine insurance for me would be horrific. Yeah, I heard people were like spamming radio channels and stuff like that. I don't know, CT Ranger, how much would be true of that, though. I mean, I think media is certainly complicit if they're essentially making fake stories up, or massively altering the truth and then plastering that 24/7 over news channels. But because people have social media now, I'm sure if people got angry enough about something, they could still share a story. Brandon Love, thank you very much. You said love streams. Thanks for a level ground discussion. That's all right. Like I said, normally I do not do political stuff at all, just because it gets very tiring when people just want to talk about surplus. People keep talking about politics, but lots and lots of people in the comments recently had said to me, could I talk about this stuff? So I'm just trying to do it more of reading what people want to say on a live stream, rather than constantly trying to answer comments later on about it. I don't know if they actually have a 25-year shelf life health quillin, but they are good filters. So if they're sealed properly and not too old, they are good filters. Yeah, exactly, Stephen. I definitely think stuff like that is very divisive and bad when the media, will put a massive spin on something, based on who does it or what. Because the thing with media I like is if they report it just factually what happened in what order, like a timeline thing. Sadly, I don't have a hydration pack connector for the S10 Tanner Stevenson. I think people have kind of made their own ones and stuff, and there might be adapters that can do it, but it's not something you commonly see on eBay. So yeah, a lot of mixed opinions coming on things. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff where I simply do not know enough about it, to form a judgment. But like I was saying, I think all laws and things should be applied equally, basically. Rather than I don't know how I can say this without it sounding really cliched, but wouldn't it be nicer if people were judged on the content of their character, not skin color, sexual preferences, everything else? But maybe I'm a bit too optimistic for thinking like that, because that clearly seems to be an opinion not many people seem to be able to hold. I hope you get a negative result, Bangers and Mash, if that's what you want with your COVID test. I don't really know what to say other than good luck. Yeah, it's bad, isn't it, Alex, when it goes this fast? I like it. That's why people going, oh no, you must really like it when you've got a stream with loads and loads of people on. It's cool to have a stream with that many people on, but I don't like it. The thing I like the most is actually when I have the Twitch chats with like Weapon Collector Peach and like Richard and all those, where there's like 3 or 4 people in the chat and we're just chatting for a couple of hours, because then it's not it's a nice relaxed thing. But Mackenzie, I could certainly do a stream where we only talk about surplus. I mean, most streams are just talking about surplus for most of it, but that's good. Over Underthinker. Glad your test was negative. The only thing CT Ranger I can advise in terms of stuff I know about from other stuff, to stop houses being as flammable, is make sure there's nothing near the walls and that are flammable. I know with the old nuclear stuff, they always said paint your house white because it reflects heat better. I mean, I know a lot of the nuclear stuff was pissing in the wind, but you can watch nuke test videos where they've got loads and loads of structures, and the painted white ones are less flammable. But is there any kind of like grills or stuff you could put in front of the windows? Thank you, Justin Vapor. I'll make sure I get some more of it. But because I think because when you see like the police riot vans and they kind of have like that mesh stuff that goes over the windscreen, it's just kind of like a grate. I'd say mostly for a house, what you probably just want is it's so stuff couldn't get thrown through the windows. Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of, CT Ranger. And maybe there might hopefully be a way of doing it which doesn't, end up being excessively expensive or make your house look like a prison from the outside, But I think the only thing that logically, if people are throwing Molotovs at your house, you can hope for is that none really break through a window, or don't light up anything flammable outside or on the roof or whatever. But all right, good luck getting your kids to sleep then, Stephen. If I remember right, even when Obama was president, Beagle, there were still lots of people that brought up all the police problems even back then when Obama was president. Also, CT Ranger, something I'd recommend. I know in a lot of the places in the US, people have mailboxes, don't they? But if you actually have like a letterbox, you might want to have a lock on it so you can lock it when you're not around if you don't want people putting letters through your door. Because I know there's been arson attacks before where people put like fireworks or explosives, through people's letterboxes. But if you have a mailbox, that isn't a thing anyway. It's just I thought I'd mention that because I know that's happened in the UK before. I certainly agree. Fighting Welsh, like we were saying earlier, a lot of the media has an agenda. Respect to any police killed in the line of duty. Or any innocent people killed by the police. But like, it's hard to say, isn't it? The thing is, like what somebody said earlier, though, there was the thing, wasn't there, about Trump basically saying like how he supported people with guns protesting outside or occupying a government building in Virginia or whatever it was, but then was having a go at some of the protesters who were peaceful outside the White House or whatever. And I know not all the protesters are peaceful whenever you have something like this, but I certainly agree, Brian, that a lot of the time people who want to take away your rights use shit like this as an excuse to do it. Because if, for Americans who don't know, in the UK, we didn't have very strict firearm laws until the Hungerford massacre and the Dunblane school shooting. They were the two things that led to a lot of restrictions on, private firearm ownership in the UK. Sadly, even if lots and lots of law-abiding people follow a law, I think if enough people who are dickheads keep breaking laws, it will be worse for everybody, in all honesty, Yeah, I know it certainly wasn't in this proportion, Beagle, because this is like the biggest thing since the LA riots, isn't it? Or maybe even bigger than that. The thing is, body armor restrictions are things I really cannot understand how Quillen, because even in the UK, you can own, like top tier Kevlar military helmets, no issue, body armor and all that. Terry Nation did a lot of the old Doctor Who and Survivors scripts, didn't he, Oliver Oliverson, if I remember right? Hello, Mr. Rimmer. We're off in a minute now. But yeah, even in like the UK, just because this might surprise some of the Americans on here at the moment, with as restrictive as some of our laws are, like what I've got here, look, I've got some heavier vests than this, but there's a British military ECBA vest, no restrictions on it in the UK, with the plates in it and everything. So that's my point, that, I can never understand laws against body armor. I know some people go, oh, but criminals can wear the body armor. It's like, fuck off, it's there to protect people, The thing is, I was saying for a while that I thought riots might have happened due to coronavirus lockdown and people getting sick of it, but I didn't really think this was going to happen, because I thought what was more likely to happen was just people getting really pissed off over lockdown somewhere, and then like riots starting off now and again because of that. And then, of course, there were people in the comments saying there's not going to be any riots, you're paranoid. Just as when I said in January on the coronavirus videos that it might get, quite, scarily out of control with lockdown measures and everything else. And, how fast it spreads or overwhelming health systems. No, it's not. It's just the flu, And I'm not trying to sound smart. It's just if you read enough stuff and you can see stuff coming, it's not really, history does repeat itself. But yeah, thankfully, yeah, like Alex says, the ones in London have been peaceful. I would question if it's a good idea to, even if you are peacefully protesting when there's a virus pandemic on, just because of the risk of spreading it. But, at least the ones seem to have been completely peaceful in London. We had the riots in 2011. There's been a few student riots before over tuition fees in more recent years, but thankfully there's not been. Is that a Polish helmet, the WZ67? Wolfie, let me Google it. It'll be one of those things, if I can get one for a sensible price, But as you can see, there's a lot of clutter behind me. I did put a shelf up in one of the other rooms earlier. Got the drill out, the roll plugs and everything, put up a proper shelf on one of the walls that can actually support the weight of objects on it. So did that. So that was good. So there'll be some stuff that, I'll move on to that shelf and then clear up more space behind me. But anyway, let me search WZ67 helmet. I know we're not talking about. What was the one I reviewed not all that long ago? Oh, I reviewed the Polish WZ50, which is like their version of SSH40. Yeah, that's. I'd certainly agree with you there, Bam Parkour. It's always better if stuff's dealt with efficiently, isn't it, to begin with, rather than, The problem is, I think sometimes with Trump, and I know this is what made him popular to begin with, but I think there's times when he really needs to learn not to Twitter about shit, or he needs to be diplomatic. Because I'm sure a lot of the stuff he's done recently, he could have worded it differently, and people might have received it better. Like, I mean, some people obviously wouldn't, because if you hate Trump, you hate Trump. But, I think there's some shit recently where you think, really, are you going to go on Twitter at a time like this, It's up to you, Straight Six Diesel, if you ever feel need for them. I just because I like collecting military surplus. I've got a couple of different plate carrier type setup things, different tiers of body armor. But depends. Do you ever think you'll need it? Hopefully, you never do. But yeah. Daniel says original gangsters were we used to remember it was a bed with covers. Now bed's in the other room now. But yeah, I've got a DP3 coming, so when the DP3 comes, I might take the katana down and put the DP3 next to that one. Because that's the massive old Soviet Rontgenometer. I love the fucking word Rontgenometer. Obviously, it just means it measures Rontgens, but still, Don't call it ion chamber, comrade. Rontgenometer. When I tidy it all up, Alex, yes. I think if you look at my old videos, there is one from yonks ago, when the layout was quite different. But what I will do is when I eventually get round to tidying a lot of it, because other rooms in the house have been done at this point, then I probably will do a room tour type video. All right, thank you for joining at 4 a.m. I'm going off soon, but I'm glad you enjoyed hearing a Brit randomly speculate about Americans protesting and rioting. Yes, shit like that, CT Ranger, is just really dangerous, isn't it? It's also like when you have people shining laser pens or whatever into pilots' eyes who have nothing to fucking do with any of the stuff going on, You can purchase new armor, but it's stupidly expensive. A lot of the time, the surplus stuff is within 5 years old. They just basically stock rotate it, in a sense. And yeah, I'd rather pay 100 quid for something that's a couple of years old than 400, 500 quid for something that's, made a month ago. But that's also because I don't think I'm ever going to seriously need it. If you were somebody who worked a certain security job and you thought, the chances I'm going to be shot at or stabbed, you might want to pay for the best stuff possible. But anyway, I'll probably head off now, but thank you to everybody at Super Chat. Thank you for everybody that's been respectful of other people's opinions, But, like I said, I'm sure lots of people have different opinions on this. Like I said, sadly, the chat was too fast moving for a lot of it to keep up with. But like I said, I'll just repeat this at the end of the stream. People who are peacefully protesting, I think that's always a right that should be protected. Freedom of expression. That they should be allowed to complain about stuff like this, because there's obviously a lot of countries in the world where if you protest against something the police or the government did, you might disappear. So I think that is worth pointing out, that why that's an important thing that should be kept. But people burning down random neighborhoods, or especially if it's black store owners having their shops targeted who are local people. Why is that happening? It's really not going to solve anything, and it's just going to make, tar, I think, a lot of people in whatever movements, But yeah, thank you, everybody, and thank you as well, yeah, like you said, Alex, to the mods, because, I'm sure you get some quite hot-headed people on the stream like this. Anyway, tomorrow, if I do a stream tomorrow, it'll be talking about surplus and the regular shit, nothing as exciting as this. All right, see you all. Stay safe, most importantly.